Hey guys, it's Graham. What's cracking? Now that Howling Wilderness is done and off the docket and releasing in just 6 days, the question becomes, what am I writing next? And, well, there are answers, and there's also some shifting of things on the docket. Immediately, the thing that I'm working on as far as like an actual manuscript for a book is the first in the series called The Intrepids that I have been planning and world building and cooking since at least 2013. A long story there. I won't go into all of it here. But if you're unfamiliar, it's me writing a superhero world. But this is not going to be the conventional like 1930s action comics type superhero world. There are people with superpowers, but they largely fly under the radar. And there's very big, compelling reasons for it. I've been wanting to get this one going for a while now, and I set a goal to get it done earlier this year, like to get a first draft of the first book. I don't know if I'll get it completely done by the end of 2024. I don't have a hard deadline for that. I don't want to blitz it and like stress myself out over it. I need to get it right. The last couple of times I've sat down to write anything in it, I've stumbled across like gaps in the story and in the building. It's like, I need to know this. I need to know this. So there's been some false starts and stops and starts again. But I'm going to sit down and I've got a functional outline. I just need to solve a couple more problems, fill a few more holes, and I'll be ready to ride. But I'm very excited for that one. The main character for the first couple of arcs in the story is a guy with perfect spatial awareness. That's his power. Like he can look at something and he knows the exact distance. He knows its size. Like he can measure things perfectly with his eyes, and he uses that skill as a combatant, but specifically as a sniper. And so I've been trying to read up on snipers, like famous ones throughout history, things that they did to improve their craft, as well as like hard, dry technical details of the craft itself. I even found like old army manuals for snipers on Amazon. One of them was the sniper manual and then like the counter sniper manual. And I was like, well, shoot, I'd probably need to know both to really understand this skill set and know what I'm writing about. So there's a lot to establish and set up in there, and I've got a very, very good character that I'm excited about. His nickname is Edge, and I'm really thrilled with the arc that I have for him in his first book, and I'm going to be working on that one and hopefully getting it out sometime next year. I'm also working on a short story, another one for a Raconteur Press anthology. There's an open call starting sometime next month, I want to say, and it's called Pogue 1. This is going to be a military fiction, and I don't know anything about being a military veteran or anything outside of books that I've read on the subject, but fortunately, that's not what they're looking for necessarily for this one. The stories are supposed to focus on non-combat roles. It's like specifically they can't be infantry, they can't be grunts. I guess that's what pogues or pogies are, is the other 85% of the armed services that do regular jobs. And they listed a couple of the regular jobs, and one of them was truck drivers. I was like, perfect. I can write a truck driver in a sci-fi space military setting on another planet. So same thing, like I ironed out some details of the setting, and I've got a really good arc for this main character. And I like the fact that they've got the word count cap set on those, so I don't have to try to write too much into it. And if I've got enough like meat on the bones, then I can just sit down and say, okay, I need to get this, and this, and lay it out. It'll be a good story. It'll read quickly. I'm excited to do that. I think that's one of the key elements. Like in addition to having it all be technically sound and logically sound, like if I'm not excited about it, I can't expect any of the readers to get excited about it, but I'm hoping that my excitement comes through with everything that I write and it gets other people hyped up. That's a nice little segue into what comes next. So 2019 I started working on a draft for a book that I didn't really have a title for at the time. I got it ironed out. I'm going to keep using that word because I've been on the clock for 11 hours. My brain is shot. I got it ironed out. I did a draft, and I hammered and hurried this draft into production for 2020 because this was what I was calling my Thanksgiving epic fantasy. This was a book that started out kind of as a joke, and ultimately doing research for it sent me down the rabbit hole that made me into the Mayflower guy on YouTube, completely by accident. I hammered out a draft so that I could record it for my old audio podcast, and I was pleased with it at the time, but as time has gone on and I look back on it, I thought, man, there's a lot wrong with that book that I need to fix. And I mentioned on a stream, I think last year at Thanksgiving, that I really wanted to get that book refined and ready for this year. Howling Wilderness just took too long, and the day job has taken too much out of me. That, since I'm not actually making a living off of my books and selling them, and I've got a dozen committed readers and stuff, like I can't give it that kind of time with the other obligations and priorities that I have in life. So if I were to try to hustle and really force this thing out in 2024, I would end up just doing the same thing that I did in 2020, where it's rushed, it's not ready, but it's all about, well, I said I would do it. No, I'm giving myself a pass on that one. So the book is titled Answerable Courage. If you somehow listened to the audio treatment that I did in 2020, understand that when you read this one, it's going to be different in a lot of ways once I get it actually finished. My sarcastic premise was that the Mayflower pilgrims would show up with proto-steampunk technology, and the Wampanoags would have some kind of terrain or flora-based magic, and they would team up against a harvest demon, and they'd be fighting mutated crops and animals and stuff. And the funny thing is, actually doing research on the Pilgrims and the Wampanoags and what life was like at Plymouth for the first year, the first 10 years, the first 50, I've become so immersed in the nonfiction side of that I find it difficult to screw with the actual lives and words of these people to that extent and treat it so unseriously. I still want to do a fantasy paranormal type story, but I need to convey that same kind of energy that I've done with other books. It needs to be more in the vein of Sleepless Hollow, because I want to get people interested in this time and place the same way that I have been for the last several years. And I want Thanksgiving to get the kind of seasonal attention that Halloween and Christmas get. And if I'm going to be a part of that creatively, then I need to make my best effort on that. And I also need to create the story with the broadest appeal. That's not to say a lowest common denominator type story, but the setting and the story and the characters, they have to be a little bit more grounded and a little bit just a little bit less gonzo than that last treatment was. So even now I'm hesitant to give it a 2025 release date, but I am going to be working on it. I've actually got the next 3 or 4 years planned out, including an omnibus engines project for 2026 and picture book is the wrong word, but an illustrated book in 2026, since that's the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. And the illustrated book is going to be a history of every presidential election. And it's that one I'm going to have some fun with. There's going to be punny names like George Smashington and Teddy Swoelsevelt and stuff like that. But it'll also list details and factoids about, well, here's who they were running against. This was how many states there were in that election. Here's what the vote percentage was. It'll be infographics and little anecdotes and almost like a little coffee table book that people can just have out and flip through. Oh, I wonder what happened this year and that year and who was running. And, for the first half of the 1800s, you'll see Henry Clay pop up in every election. That dude ran 4 times and failed. But I figured that would be a well-timed book to release for the 250th anniversary. but I'm not gonna even worry about touching that one for a while. Like right now, my focus is getting that first Intrepids book and getting the Pogue 1 story. And if I need to take a break from the Intrepids manuscript, I can start poking around with Answerable Courage. That's what the next 6 months or so is going to look like. And right around Christmas break, I'm going to take a look at the 2025 calendar and figure out what I want to get published and released then. I haven't exactly committed to what's coming out that year, but when you get to the end of Howling Wilderness, you'll see a teaser for the next installment, like the next era of Engine's stories. Some characters from this one are going to appear in the next one, but the protagonist for the next arc, the next trilogy, which is called Engines of Justice, he gets introduced in this one, but he doesn't get a whole ton of page time. You're going to see him like be his own man in the next trilogy. I'm being intentionally vague because I really want you guys to get excited and go and buy this book on the 27th. I don't know if the pre-order link is available yet. Got to find it, but you guys know that I'm just going to keep spamming that out for the next couple of days. So I've got a big week ahead of me. 23rd is when Super Generation drops. That's Friday. And then 27th, which is next Tuesday, is when Howling Wilderness drops. And you need to get ready to be reading because, oh man, I've got some of my best work coming your way. So those are my writing projects. Because I'm not busy enough. I also I launched the first episode, the first installment of my 5-minute Silmarillion project on the Substack a couple of months ago. And while I've read the first few chapters of the Silmarillion, I need to sit down and collect my notes and compile it into something that I could then read and put a slideshow together for and all that. Technically it's more of a reading project than a writing project. The writing side of it isn't that hard. It's finding the time to read and note all that and chart like who's this person and they did what and when and why. And the idea is to make this Old Testament of Middle Earth more accessible to more readers, like to provide them a framework and an outline to follow if they decide to go this route and actually read this book in all of its glorious and prosaic detail. So I'm not lacking at all for writing projects. Right now, my evening hours have been consumed with getting a commission ready for a customer. I've got a guy who actually hired me, and if I'm lucky, I'll be able to have him pay me in books because that is the coin of the realm. Anyway, that's what I'm up to. Let me know which one you are most curious about. Until next time, drive safe. See you out there.